Hello everybody, this is the M-Crew Dude. Are you sitting? I would assume so, because this is going to come as a shock. Uncharted is now 10 years old, if you can believe it. One of Sony's greatest video game franchises, Uncharted, began in 2007 on the PlayStation 3, and since then, it has left a lasting impact on gamers with 6 games, a few spin-offs, and a handful of merchandise. With such a great legacy, it would come as no surprise that other game companies would want to cash in on it. This is Unearthed, Trail of Ibn Battuta, and yes, this is real. It was developed by an independent Saudi Arabian company called Semaphore, and was released on Steam and iOS worldwide, as well as the PlayStation Network and PAL regions only, making it Saudi Arabia's very first multi-platform video game. It was intended to be an episodic game, but only the first episode was released and received a massive amount of hatred, but then Semaphore released a remastered version called Episode 1, the Gold Edition, which fixed most of the glitches but made no real improvements to gameplay. In order for it to be remastered, it would have had to have been mastered to begin with. It should have been called Unearthed, Trail of Ibn Battuta, Re-Screwed Up Edition. It would make sense to look into the history of Ibn Battuta, as he was one of the most famous Muslim explorers. Ibn Battuta was a Moroccan-born explorer who had traveled across Asia, Africa, and parts of Europe. He began his pilgrimage at age 20 with the intent on going to Mecca. He became so fond of foreign travels, he continued his journeys for almost 30 years, traveling about 75,000 miles in his lifetime, a much greater distance than Marco Polo. Ooh. He has become so inspirational that there have been several movies and documentaries about him. Probably the most well-known is the film Journey to Mecca, and ironically, a trailer for the film is featured in Unearthed for some reason. Speaking of which, let's explore Unearthed, Trail of Ibn Battuta. The game begins in typical Uncharted fashion, in the middle of the climax as we play as some guy plucked from the Nathan Drake bargain bin. Okay, so we really play as an Arabic fortune hunter named Faris Jawad, as he appears wounded and out to rescue his sister Dania. As we are introduced to the game's controls, I have to say that in order to shoot, you need to click one mouse button to aim and the other to fire, so you can't play using a laptop. I found that out the hard way. That's when I gotta plug in an Xbox controller and continue, but luckily it is completely compatible. The tutorial is presented in a very clumsy manner as we learn to shoot, throw grenades, and fight brain-dead enemies. Since the AI is so god-awful, they will often shoot into the walls, and this one guy who we have to take down doesn't feel like walking close enough. Already the game is so bad the enemies don't want to be involved.
I fucking hate tutorials, and this one is terrible.
Finally, we are introduced to the worst melee combat I've ever seen in gaming. Yeah, worse than Ride to Hell. Are you seeing this? Okay, so here's how it works. There are 3 buttons for blocking, punching, and kicking, and since the hit detection is so bad and the characters move so slow, it's hard to distinguish when you're hitting someone or taking damage. After a few moments of this, the game just takes pity on you by ending the fight. I should also mention that on the PlayStation 3 version, the fighting combat is slightly better, as both of you are locked in sort of a 2.5D plane, and both characters have health bars, so that makes it a little bit easier. After you finish up that little chicken fight, Faris breaks into the office of the main villain, who's never even introduced so it's not relevant, and proceeds to rescue Dania.
Now what would you do if you were me?
Well, I'd probably be at home watching Netflix and not wasting my Steam money on crappy games. 3 weeks earlier, Faris and Dania are at a temple where the pharaoh, Amos, has hidden his most prized possessions.
So, this is Amos's temple.
Yep, that's the one. 3,560 years of history in this place.
Well, it looks like somebody did their Wikipedia research.
You mean you're not coming in with me?
Of course not, Faris. For starters, you were the one who always enjoyed raiding tombs and uncharting mysteries in video games.
I could not groan hard enough to emphasize how bad that was.
Oh, okay. So you were telling me that actual consideration for my well-being went into planning this thing. Good to know someone will come and extract my body in case the quick load button doesn't work.
Relax. As your elder sister, I have always been taking care of you like a baby. Well, except for when you were terribly annoying, of course.
Nice. A threat and an assurance, all wrapped into one. Remind me again, Dania, what am I risking my life for?
Your life and my precious time.
Well, it's certainly great that Dania has such disregard for her brother's safety. So, as you enter the tomb, your first task is to find 4 hidden items to activate this fountain, but there's no challenge involved as you simply have to smash a few pots and climb on a convenient monolith, with poorly ripped-off Uncharted mechanics. Also, you can request hints to which the game just tells you where to find them. Speaking of finding things, there are collectible treasures throughout the game, and just watch what happens when you pick them up. Gee, does that look familiar? After that not-so-challenging challenge is finished... Oh, come on! They put deadly pitfalls in areas I could barely see! Seriously, with the glare on my screen, I honestly thought that was part of the shadow. Anyways, what was I just saying? Oh, right. So you come to this dark area while using a torch to navigate.
Very funny, Dania.
Are you afraid of the dark? Remember that show from when we were young?
First of all, ugh. Second, how would she know where he is? She wanted to stay outside and enjoy the sun while Forrest nearly dies. The paths are way too narrow to really see, and since the controls are very clumsy, one wrong step sends you falling to your death. At least Drake has the courtesy to grab onto a ledge if he walks off of it. Speaking of death, you come across a few traps with swinging axes that are pretty easy to avoid. But then you have to dodge rolling boulders, and here's the problem. They don't roll in straight lines like they would in normal games, because here, the physics are very wonky. They have no pattern, and just bounce off each other like they're made of hard rubber. What's also funny is that there's a pit that they're supposed to fall into, but they will often hop over it and hit you, killing you instantly. Once you manage to get over that part, you have to find 2 golden daggers to unlock the next door. One requires you to use this RC car to activate platforms. Okay, I guess we'll never see that car again. The other requires you to jump and climb around the walls, and believe it or not, this is not the kind of game that has good jumping controls. If you're going to rip off anything from Uncharted, at least take inspiration from the climbing mechanics. Dozens of other games have. Gee, Amos, don't you think you might have wanted to invest in better security to protect your most prized possession? At that moment, the tomb gets attacked by armed mercenaries, forcing you to fight your way back to Dania.
Oh, finally made it. Where's Dania? Did she hide inside the car, maybe?
Well, so much for that.
So, you have an accomplice on the outside. That explains a lot of things.
Who are you?
That is none of your concern. You definitely saved us the trouble of solving all those puzzles. So, I might let you live after all. Now, hand me the box.
Here you go. Catch!
So you have to fight the mercenary leader, who is never addressed by name in the game. However, I recently found out that his name is Ozge. The only way I know this is because that's the name of his emoticon image in the Steam community. After he is defeated, followed by a really poorly written exchange of dialogue, we then have to suffer through this horrible drive-by shooting stage.
You should have accepted my offer while you had the chance.
Drop it.
Careful with this thing, little one. You might get yourself hurt.
Wow.
There you go. Any more worries, big guy?
See, I'm with her. I mean, she's with me. Come on, Dania. Let's get out of here.
You shoot with standard controls, but the animations of the enemies are way too ridiculous to take seriously. You turn very slowly, so the enemies are bound to shoot you before you have a chance to face them. Eventually, you come to this helicopter and are demanded to shoot out this tower. The game gives you about 5 seconds to figure this out, but once you destroy it, congratulations. You finish the most challenging part of the game, as it gets much easier from here. Forrest then gets a phone call in the middle of the desert, and yes, they do make a joke about that in case you're wondering. So a man named Rashid informs Forrest and Dania that he has something of great value in his possession that would interest them, so he invites them to Morocco to discuss business terms. Ah, Morocco. A fine country of belly dancing, fine jewelry, the Atlas Mountains, And damn good mint tea, I have to admit. Thanks, Faris.
I know I can't resist Moroccan tea.
So all you do here is walk with them while having riveting conversations about cats and the weather.
This shawarma looks real tasty. I usually prefer chicken.
Why do all these NPCs look so awkward? Their faces are really fixed on, and if you look closely enough, some of them don't even have thumbs. So Rashid explains that he has a copy of some documents detailing Ibn Battuta's travels, which were originally written by a real-life writer of the Sultan named Ibn Juzay, who just so happens to be an ancestor of Rashid.
When he returned home, here in Tangier, the Sultan asked him to write an account of his journey. Now, because Ibn Battuta wasn't a writer, the task was given to one of the Sultan's writers, my great-great-grandfather, Ibn Juzay al-Kalabi. The book is called The Journey, or Al-Rila.
I heard that it took 2 years to write it.
True. The book eventually got translated into many languages, and it's available in bookstores today.
You can Google it later. Moving on. Obviously, there are no enemies in this segment. Technically. However, I found the hard way that you don't screw with this one cart here, because if you do, it makes Forrest glitch out. So the gang makes it to this little cafe where Rashid discusses his proposition.
I will have green tea, please. It acts as a cleanser, especially useful for someone at my age.
Too much undercooked shawarma will do that to you.
And I will have the traditional Moroccan tea, with 3 spoons of white sugar. On second thought, make them brown.
Just 1 cappuccino for me, please. What? I may occasionally have a change of heart.
Oh, okay. So after all that, you change your mind? Oh, that's great. Can't believe I bought this tea. I can't. It's too delicious. So Rashid guides them back to his apartment to look over the writings of Juzay, only to find the door open as a thief runs off with the book. After an unexciting chase, you have a brief catfight with the thief who is strangely tougher than Özgür, only to have him killed by a sniper, causing all the police to swarm the area.
I said talk, or I will...
Boris, are you alright?
The attacker was killed by a sniper before I could find out anything. The diaries are not with him. He probably handed them over to someone else.
The police are surrounding the building. This doesn't look good. Find your way out of there fast, but don't engage any of them.
Sure. How about I just put on my invisibility cloak? That should make things easier.
You know, it's pretty clear that they're trying way too hard to recreate the charm of the Uncharted series. While Drake had a crass and sarcastic charm, Forrest is a little too lighthearted to make it work. He doesn't swear or get really angry, which in most cases I would be fine with, but here, it actually works against him, because I can't really imagine him picking up a gun and killing mercenaries while shouting "Bullseye!" after each successful headshot. Sounds more like you just won a prize at the state fair. In order to escape the police, you have to follow a scripted path and avoid them, because if they spot you, you simply restart at the checkpoint, so there's really no need for stealth at all. It's such a waste of potential. The final part of the game involves Forrest driving Rashid's car through the city while trying not to hit the police cars. That's actually the only way you can fail this part. Hitting walls and normal cars are okay, but you don't screw around with the cop cars. The map looks fairly open, as if you're driving across an open world, but it's simply an illusion, because if you drive straight forward, it's almost as if you're driving in circles as the scenery keeps recycling. The driving is also really crappy. The physics are really stiff, and it's difficult to steer around obstacles, but there are several camera angles to choose from, much like GTA. There's absolutely no strategy. All you do is drive around for a little while, and then you win. Since the diaries weren't on the thief when Forrest caught him, they are left without a lead.
But now the diaries are gone.
Luckily, I made a copy of them about a week ago. It's in the glove compartment.
Well, that's insultingly convenient. Seriously, that's not good writing. So the team then sets off to find the legendary discoveries of Ibn Battuta, and presumably crash into this wall. As the trailer sets up the events for the next chapter that will never come, I have to admit, the presentation isn't too bad. Yeah, it's cheap and looks like it was handled by a first-year Photoshop student, not to mention they use footage from Journey to Mecca. It does at least do a fair job at intriguing me. You don't need money to make something look creative, but I still think they could have used more convincing live-action shots. In fact, It would have been cool if they had live actors playing the characters in these trailers, much like what Remedy did with Alan Wake and Quantum Break. As the credits roll, I am truly blown out of my mind that not only was motion capture used to some degree, but Troy Baker also voiced some of the characters. Finally, a survival mode will be unlocked once you beat the game. I can't imagine it'll be any better, but let's take a look at it. Oh my god, this is terrible. Where do I start? Okay, so here you have to fight endless waves of zombies or mummies, and since most of the levels are taken from the main game, they are either too small, too big, or simply too dark to see. Unlike the main game, health doesn't regenerate, so you have to rely on health pickups dropped by enemies, and almost every enemy will drop a weapon or health pickup, so by the end of a few rounds, the entire floor was covered with more weapons than I knew what to do with. In a normal game, rounds would get increasingly harder as tougher enemies appear that give you more points, but here, every enemy gives you 10 points, and each round is exactly the same as they spawn in the exact same locations. It's just embarrassingly easy. You're more likely to blow yourself up with a grenade than to keep playing. Well, that was Unearthed, and even though it's a shameless ripoff of Uncharted, there were some things I liked about it. Hear me out. The soundtrack was surprisingly really good. The voice acting is okay, but it is better than some of the other bad games I've reviewed, such as Ride to Hell and Dark. The only difference is that Unearthed actually has a few known actors in it, such as Jeff Rozic, Katie Crown, and David Lodge. A few effects were decent, such as the lens flares when Farah stands out in the sun, as well as the motions of some of the fabric. The overall setup is actually not bad. Sometimes it did feel like a history lecture, but I am interested in Ibn Battuta's exciting life, and to be honest, I really want to see this story continue. There's a lot that you could do with this, and it's a shame that it had most of that potential wasted. Obviously, treasure hunting games have existed long before Uncharted and Tomb Raider, so it's not a concept that's necessarily doomed from the start. And now, the bad stuff, and sadly there's a lot to be said. The writing, the camera, the dialogue, the character models, the melee combat, the driving, the climbing, the object physics, the hit detection, and the challenges are all done horribly wrong. This game simply feels unfinished. I mean, I can tell that some thought went into it, but I don't think it went into the right places. It's fine to be inspired by something great, but you have to do something new with it. After all, that's what I do with the show. This is the Crew Dude signing off, wishing you all a very pleasant day.
Pioneers of maximum audacity, whose resumes show that we are just a team to live where others merely dream, filling up our head of steam. On the trail we blaze, changing legend into fact. We shall ride into history, turning myth into truth. We shall surely gaze on the sweet.
Hey, this is Troy Baker hanging out with my buddy Michael here at Boston Fan Expo. And if you want to find out more about Uncharted, this is the place to do it. Crew Dude. How's about that?
Hey everybody, it's Nolan North. You're watching Crew Dude. I'm Nathan Drake, among others. But as Nathan, I can only say, oh crap. No.